He was shoved out of the courtyard the moment he stepped out in his red MAGA hat, while bystanders looked on approvingly at his humiliation. The self-proclaimed activist who led the charge had no idea he was evicting the actual owner of the entire complex. None of them could have imagined how drastically things were about to change. And once the truth surfaced, their comfortable reality flipped upside down, and that was only the beginning. Vladimir, a Republican proudly wearing a bright red MAGA hat, stepped out for a walk in the courtyard of his apartment complex. He had decided to take a break from his daily grind that day, but he barely made it a few steps before he was accosted by his neighbor, Alexey, an activist notorious for loudly protesting anything he dislikes. The moment Alexey spotted the hat, he went off. He rushed over to Vladimir, shouting, "That hat again! You Republicans are ruining everything. I won't allow you to spread your propaganda here." Vladimir gave him a calm smile and politely responded, "And what exactly are we ruining? The lawn, the flowers, or your mood?" Taken aback by Vladimir's composure, Alexey grew even angrier. He started calling Vladimir an ignoramus and a lackey, desperately trying to provoke him into lashing out. But Vladimir, still poised, continued on through the courtyard, doing his best to ignore the yelling. The spectacle began drawing the attention of other residents. Some recorded the scene on their phones, while others simply watched from their windows. For most, this was a novelty. Alexey usually screamed his political slogans at community meetings, but he had never escalated to an outright confrontation until now. No sooner had Vladimir taken a seat on a bench near the fountain than Alexey rushed over with a fresh barrage of grievances. "Leave immediately. This courtyard is no place for political provocation." Without waiting for a response, Alexey practically shouted every stereotype he had ever heard about Republicans. Vladimir remained calm, occasionally firing back with short, sarcastic remarks. "I'm curious, what other amusing stories have you heard about me?" Vladimir's composed demeanor only fueled Alexey's anger. The neighbor threatened to call the police for disturbing the peace. And when he realized Vladimir had no intention of leaving, he took more drastic action, calling in a couple of fellow activists from the neighboring buildings. Some of the residents started posting videos of the scene on social media, captioning them, "Our justice warrior at it again." Before long, a small crowd had gathered in the courtyard. People debated whether Alexey was right to demand the expulsion of the guy in the red hat, or if Vladimir had every right to be there as a resident. A few onlookers cheered Vladimir on. "Hang in there, and don't take off that hat. We stand for freedom of choice." Determined as ever, Alexey grabbed Vladimir roughly by the elbow, attempting to force him out of the courtyard. The whole spectacle was starting to look like a farce, and the tension steadily grew with each passing moment. When the police finally showed up, prompted by Alexey's persistent calls, they were surprised to find Vladimir acting extraordinarily calm and polite. They asked him for his documents, and that's when the moment of truth arrived. It turned out that Vladimir wasn't just a resident of the complex. He was its full owner, via a large property management company he had purchased with partners a few years back. Throughout all this time, he had stayed under the radar, never advertising his true status. Upon seeing the ownership papers, Alexey was utterly stunned. He realized he had been trying to expel the very man who owned this entire courtyard, and, incidentally, the surrounding ones as well. The crowd gathered around let out a collective gasp. Alexey's expression mingled shock with fear. This can't be real. That must be a forgery. It's impossible." However, after reviewing the documents, the officers confirmed their authenticity. An awkward silence held for a moment, and then the onlookers erupted in surprised comments and laughter. Alexey, swallowing hard, tried to wiggle out of the situation. "Well, I was just trying to protect the rights of our residents. I had no idea you owned the place." Vladimir smirked. "It's all right. We all make mistakes sometimes. But I guess this won't stop you from holding your little protests over every tiny issue, will it?" The crowd burst out laughing, and a few neighbors were already uploading videos under captions like, "Activist humiliates himself by kicking out the owner of his own property, then runs away." Alexey made a hasty exit under the disapproving gazes of bystanders. Realizing there had been no actual crime, the police left. People approached Vladimir to thank him for keeping his cool and to see if he was okay. A couple of neighbors asked him not to be too harsh on Alexey, suspecting there might be deeper issues at play. Vladimir smiled. Punish him? Why bother? He's already punished himself. Everyone now has a video of his grand performance. He can wander the courtyard all he likes, just no more grabbing people or shouting. Onlookers laughed and applauded. Someone posted the clip on TikTok, and by that evening, it racked up thousands of views. The activist neighbor became a local celebrity, though not in the way he'd imagined. Once again, Vladimir proved that calm and confidence overpower any burst of aggression. And most importantly, his MAGA hat stayed firmly on his head, symbolizing his right to believe what he wants, something no one could take away from him.